would like to welcome and thank you for joining us for Spotlight on Urban Tech in Europe, the virtual series. This is webinar 6 in the series, entitled Reinforcing a Sense of Community by Tackling Urbanisation Challenges. We have some fantastic expert panelists for you again today, who we will introduce to you in a moment. My name is Christina C. My company is C Intelligence, and we started the project with Pascal Bleeker from Okcuoglu, along with our independent advisors, with the aim to create connections, new opportunities, share insights and knowledge within the urban tech community. The project includes a series of webinars on a monthly basis with a follow-up expert insights document to expand on the discussion. We'll also have a survey, report and an event to bring everyone together, hopefully in person at some point. Please visit the website urbantech.world to find out more about us and view options to get involved. Follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel urbantech.world to view the recording after the event. Over to Pascal now to introduce our guest moderator, Alex Owen Hunt from FDI Intelligence, along with all of our other panelists.
Well, thank you, Christina, and welcome everybody on this live webinar of Urban Tech World. My name is Pascal Bleeker, and I'm the co-founder of Okcuoglu and passionate about technology and cities. And for many years, technologies are rapidly changing our lives and societies every day and everywhere. So in this webinar, we have selected an amazing group of experts from the cities of Cork, Ireland, and Vilnius, Lithuania, also from Mastercard City Possible and from Inside SFI Center for Data Analytics, who share with us their latest insights and answer your questions. Well, today's webinar will show how to reinforce a sense of community by tackling urbanization challenges. The effects of COVID-19 will also be briefly covered, as I think everybody in Europe is at least, working on that topic still. We already received a few questions for our panel, but more questions are welcome. So if you have any question for our panel, please share with me via the chat functionality as we end the webinar with a Q&A. The webinar will take in total approximately 45 minutes and will be moderated by Alex, and he will present himself later on. And now without further ado, let me give the floor to our panelists, who will briefly introduce themselves as well. Well, can I start with you, Taurimas?
A few words about me. I'm a city council member at Vilnius, capital city of Lithuania. Also a banker. For the past 15 years, I'm involved in different financial affairs. I'm one of the co-founders of the financial institution, and also I work as associate professor at Vilnius University in financial programs. Plus, I work as international advisor for capital raising and different international projects that include digital innovation hubs. I'm the head of Lithuanian Agrotech Digital Innovation Hub. So, yeah, that would be it.
Oh, thanks a lot, Taurimas. Then I'd like to continue with you, Thomas. Can you present yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas McHugh. I'm the Director of Public Affairs at Cork Chamber. Cork Chamber represents 1,200 members, employing about 100,000 people. And we are Ireland's most active regional advocacy group on behalf of our members. And in my role, it's all about government liaison and representing our members as best as possible to drive a progressive agenda for the business community in Cork.
Thanks, and good to have you here, Thomas. Rita, could you also present yourself?
So hello everyone, Rita Okcuoglu, Mastercard. I work in global cities in Mastercard and leading the City Possible for Europe and Middle East and Africa region, manage the network relationships.
Thank you, Rita. Yeah, going back to Cork, can you also present yourself, Long?
Great to be here with all of you. Thank you. My name is Long Pham. I'm working at the Insight Center for Data Analytics based in the University College Cork. I'm especially working at the moment on the projects that call AI for EU. I'm the community managers, but my passion is smart city and how to enable and empower citizens and residents of cities to co-create sustainable solutions for the quality of life for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Long. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome panel. I think we have a great panel from all over Europe, Vilnius, Cork, Brussels, and I'd now like to go back over to London, to Alex. Alex, the floor is yours to take it over, and good luck.
Thank you very much, Pascal and Christina, for introducing us, and panelists for giving us a brief intro into your expertise. I mean, as mentioned, I'm a global markets editor at FDI Intelligence, which is a specialist unit of the Financial Times, focusing my reporting on foreign direct investment, urbanisation, economic development more broadly. So very excited to dig into this very pertinent topic of reinforcing the sense of community in cities. Now, to set the scene of our discussion, I think it's worth really addressing the elephant in the room, which is perhaps the impact of the pandemic. And Thomas, I'd love if you could kick us off. What has the impact been of the pandemic in the city of Cork? Maybe there's some positives, maybe there's some negatives. It'd be great to hear your perspective to start things.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alex. It's actually a very interesting time to ask that question. We've actually just published our results this week from our quarterly economic trends survey. And actually, we've got 83% business confidence in Cork right now, which, given the toll of the pandemic and given the changing nature of the trading relationship between the EU and the UK, with the UK being the largest trading partner for Ireland, is very, very, very interesting. And that's up from 68% last quarter, which again is a shift. And for comparative analysis, that would have sat around the high 80s and low 90s for the last number of years. So it came from a very strong figure, and it looks like it's going back in that direction. So that's very, very positive endorsement of where the mindset is of the Cork business community right now. I suppose in terms of how the pandemic has kind of, come to roost or come to impact on the city region, I'd look at it through our own work as a chamber representing our members. So like earlier this year, looking to last year now, I suppose we sought to just frame how do we actually look at recovery beyond the immediacy of business supports. And we put in place a program called a Sustainable Cork program to look at that, recovery, how best does Cork distinguish itself? And we did that through the lens of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which by their very nature are a very, very positive framework for humanity to work towards, to achieve a better future. So looking through all that, we engaged about 1,000 people across all of our sectors, across citizens, members of the public in Cork. And they framed a very, very positive view for the future of Cork, defined by quality of life infrastructure, actually, as being the number one thing that will define recovery for Cork. And the top 3 things that they said that they'd like to see prioritised or delivered upon over the next 5 years, for example, as part of that, was connected public transport, number 1. Number 2, cycleways, greenways, enhanced walkways and amenities. And number 3, green spaces, trees, wildflowers, living walls, that whole space around just, bringing, flora and biodiversity into the city region. So, that's very, very positive framework to be pushing forwards for the city region. And actually the local authorities and national government have responded very, very well to that agenda. And it's not exclusively the Chamber's agenda, but I suppose that the general sentiment. And if you look at this, there's a very strong program from the City Council called Reimagining Your City, where they've said about, taking over places that might have previously been used by cars and turning them into terraces and places to eat and walk and cycle. Project Act by the County Council doing the same thing in the regional towns. A huge street mural project called Ordu, bringing the best Irish street artists to Cork and really just reinvigorating how we interface with culture when we can't get into our cultural institutions in various lockdowns, but you can't help but stumble across these things on the streets. And finally, things like, parklet projects to, again, take out parking spaces and create those types of nice spaces around the city. And then very fundamental announcements in terms of progressing massive bus corridor program called Bus Connects, to totally overhaul public transport. And just last week, actually, the announcement of 80 mobility projects getting central government funding through the National Transport Agency to the tune of 45 million. That's just for this city region alone. So again, you can kind of see a direction of travel there with strong business supports in place and with strong capital programs and strong kind of unity of vision for the city region. And I think the outlook is actually very positive for Cork.
Fantastic. Well, a perfect start to our discussion. The pandemic may have affected business confidence earlier on, but now you're seeing that 86% result coming from your survey. I now want to come over to Vilnius and see what the situation's like on the ground there. Taurimas, what are the sort of the effects been of the pandemic on Vilnius and some of the projects you have ongoing in the city?
Yeah, first of all, I would like just to mention that before the pandemic situation, Vilnius was doing really, really good job, and We had a lot of awards, let's say, like good achievements. For example, we were announced as like by the CE Business Services Awards, for example, as the most dynamic developing city in the Central and Eastern Europe, and we were announced by the Financial Times as the second smart location of the future for direct investments, et cetera, et cetera. And the most important, situation we had that even 98% of our residents were happy to live in Vilnius. So we kind of had like we're living close to heaven, recently. But then we got this situation called COVID-19, which is global, and the main issue that the situation has changed. We during the first pandemic, we were one of the leaders among like all OECD countries. But unfortunately, during the second wave of pandemic quarantine, so now we're like suffering a lot, and most of the businesses are like perhaps in the rest of the world are struggling, and I wouldn't be that optimistic because we heard that about other countries which have the third wave of pandemic situation, and we're not that optimistic anymore. But on the other hand, we have obvious changes in our business environment, in our political environment, in our which could be considered as a potential and an opportunity for the business, and especially for developing digital different solutions and smart city concepts. So we see that there are more people staying over their computers. The communication has completely changed. So if for example we had such kind of event exactly 1 year ago, we wouldn't have any interest in that perhaps because we were like spoiled of like face-to-face meetings, of lots of flights. Even myself, I was like spending like more than half of the month on a plane and traveling for different business meetings. Now this situation has completely changed. Instead of like traveling, we have those Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, or other tools using for our communication, which became a common practice. So in general, all business environment has changed. I'm pretty sure that after we have the end of the situation, we will not come back to the previous forms of communication, including different solutions for the smart cities and in general for the business. So the times have changed, and we got to realize that we will not go back to the previous situation. And we're pretty sure that the speed that we had before this, we're going to be capable to maintain, and we hope that together with new with the emerge of new technologies, with new trends, with new habits of the people, of the consumers, of the citizens, we're going to be able to transfer those, I would say, temporary limitations into limitless opportunities.
Certainly, and I know only too well how exciting Vilnius is as a city, having visited there a year ago, just before everything got locked down. And certainly, you mentioned the Financial Times ranking. I think that was done by some of my colleagues. So exciting stuff happening there, as well as in Cork, as we've heard from Thomas. Now, of course, in the development of smart cities and all of these issues that we're going to dig a bit deeper into this in this panel, people are obviously central. Cities are highly concentrated and populated areas, and really, if we're to empower the communities to face urbanization challenges head on, it's really about engaging with the citizens. So I think you'll be perfectly placed to kick us off in this discussion. So you're an expert in citizen engagement, and particularly for developing smart cities. I wonder why empowering citizens is important, firstly, and how can citizens contribute to tackling urbanization problems?
Thank you. It has been a very challenging journey for all of the cities that have tried to develop their smart city journey. But again, it is a journey. It is not a destination. How smart a city is, it could always be smarter. And as the city has been, as you already said, about the attraction of foreign investment, it's not just only foreign investment, but also the inward investments as well. And also the cities also have to compete one another in order to really have the talents that would be relocate or coming to their boundaries, for example. But again, budget is limited. So that's why it is challenging for cities to really scale up those different kind of solutions using ICT, which is enabled by the availability of different technologies, as we mentioned today. One of those is, of course, communication, but there's many others like sensings and other kind of intelligence technologies out there. So in short, why it is important to engage citizen is actually that they are the end user of any solutions that the cities adopted, especially in those that they have been called as public services. They are also the demand generators for all of the smart city solutions. And of course, if cities and other stakeholders would like to involve them, because there's a lot of resources, intangible as well as tangible, and also local expertise that you can leverage from the citizens. And in that way, if we do it right, and if we allowed it, the methodologies to take place, then citizen and resident of cities can be co-producers, co-creators of locally generated solution. Because as we see today, especially in the context of the pandemic, a lot of the times what we see is the locally generated solutions would be able to help not just only those residents and citizens of the cities to reap the outcome of it, but also for people who see that, okay, here is the communities that seems to really engaged, really care about their environment, really care about the services that they have available for people. So why don't we come and join them with that journey? So I think in short, there's kind of the pull and the push motivation there for cities to really engage with citizens and residents, but also the citizen and residents, for example, really wanted to be a part of the solution as well, because it is their home, it is the place that they want to grow their families, and it is also the place that they want to really have others to join them and to be continuously work as a collective effort. So I think that that's why city needs citizens, and that's why citizens can actually contribute to the adoptions and also the development of smart city solutions as well.
Certainly, you're so right. I mean, people have to be front and center when you're thinking of city making, creating that quality of life environment that's going to retain them, make sure that they enjoy all the amenities there, and reap the full benefits of being in close proximity to their fellow citizens. So thank you very much for sharing why and how city, why we should focus on citizen engagement. Now, coming over to Mastercard, I know in 2018, Mastercard launched City Possible, which is this initiative that brings cities, companies, and communities together to identify common challenges and co-develop solutions that advance inclusive and sustainable urban development. Now, I know that Mastercard, as well as your participant city strongly believe in sort of this inclusive and evidence-based urban development. Rita, I wonder if you could just share Mastercard's role in urban tech and perhaps provide some examples of how cities have been engaging with their communities over the last 12 months.
Sure, thank you. So Mastercard's long-standing commitment to collaboration examples around the multiple industries, and now through the City Possible partnerships, bringing the power of public-private partnerships to the cities through the partnership with the city leaders across the globe. Cities have been responding quite actually one of the most unprecedented times and challenges of our time, while facing significant legacy challenges. We want to help city leaders achieving their goals of improving quality of life and providing better access to opportunities for all residents. We are also putting digital economy to work for everyone, everywhere, developing data insights, technology, and human capital to tackle pressing global challenges that we are all facing. So technology, I mentioned, it has a vital role to play addressing the historical fractions exacerbated through the global pandemic that we faced last 12 and more months, and realizing a future founded in more inclusive innovation for cities and residents they serve. So through the City Possible partnership, we are bringing a global network of cities together to accelerate inclusive innovation, allowing cities to learn from each other and accelerate together. Our partnership framework focuses on building a more inclusive and sustainable cities by increasing access to city services, expanding urban mobility solutions, and informing an inclusive recovery through the data-driven insights. One of the questions that we, I think, all ask is, what have the cities been facing and how this can impacted the people and communities? And there are many, but mainly if you look at few, and I would like to share with you actually today, is lack of digitalization and the silo approach. So the most vulnerable needs to essential services when crisis hits, digitization of operation breaks actually the silos and provides quick and easy access, and disbursement and resources when needed can be actually achieved the most. Mastercard City Key is one of the solutions that we have created. Is the solution that combines ID, access to city services, and payment functionalities into one tool that helps residents with paying bills, accessing city services, and or also the transit options. So through City Key and Mastercard cause enablement, we were able to actually respond to an urgent call for help from the city of LA last year during the COVID pandemic, the first wave, and develop and launch an Angelina campaign in partnership with City of Los Angeles, the Mayor's Fund of Los Angeles, and Accelerator for America. Leveraging Mastercard tools, network, and technology to raise over $36 million in private donation to provide direct financial assistance to Los Angeles residents impacted by COVID. From contactless in-store payments, enabling a move on online and faster payment to finance, we also address small and medium enterprises' urgent challenges. And globally, actually, what we see is that the contactless penetration in person raised from 30% 2019 to 41% in 2020, which demonstrate us the need of a dramatic shift, moving to more digital economies and digital cities, and consumer behaviors, how flexible they are to actually change. So obviously, Europe continues to lead the contactless innovation across, because of the infrastructure has been already built. And what we saw in Europe, for example, I would like to give you another example in Flanders in Belgium. They moved the public transportation to touchless payment. And basically they were answering the number one concern of the inhabitants, how we are dealing actually while moving to more hygiene transportation. And the list goes on and on. Obviously, I would like to highlight that public-private partnership models are very important. It's also not only breaking the silos, but as well as lack of accessible, usable data. So, insights into economic behaviors and bringing this insight to the communities, it's very important. Not only the numbers, but also sentiment and analytics, right? So one of the partnership we have with our partners that I would like to, for example, share with you, two City Possible network members that they've been using the City Insights and Mastercard's Recovery Insight. There are Greater London Authority and the London Software Council, and they use a Mastercard's Geographic Insights, providing spending analysis, gives actually essential insight into the localized economic health and activity of the inhabitants in their cities. So also sentimental analysis is very also important for the cities to understand how my inhabitants are actually reacting in social media or local newspapers. What are they talking? What are their concerns? So another example we have done with Zen City in the partnership with Zen City, and we've been providing cities with the insights into resident sentiments and actually really address the concerns and the questions that inhabitants are discussing in the social media and find the challenges and address those challenges and help those the cities to actually find those gaps. So there's a lot of opportunities. Obviously, we are helping to break those silo impacts and bringing everyone together and supporting residents and visitors and businesses.
Thank you very much for that thorough overview, Rita, and some really cracking examples there, you say in LA in the US, and raising money to support people who found it very challenging in the pandemic. And equally, digitalization can play a key role in enabling this engagement with the community and really empowering the citizens. Now, at previous Urban Tech World events, it's been stated that cities need to think in a structured and holistic way to adapt and prepare for all issues, related to mobility, food supply, citizen protection, and the like. And certainly, a city's identity is actually expressed under the smart city brand in which it's trying to promote. And as such, identity really is key to ensure there is a safeguarded future for generations to come. So I wondered, Taurimas, if you could share with us what have been some of the key challenges addressed by Vilnius to create a Vilnius identity, and perhaps which technologies do you foresee to be used in the next years in that vein?
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, it took like quite a lot of time, like while we build our identity and like our, let's say, approach, what we want to like see like in the coming years. So, and basically we were focusing on three so-called KPIs, which is like happiness index, travel time index, and life expectation. So mostly, perhaps the most emphasized result we had, this is the so-called happiness index. Even we have some street signs, which is like when you enter the city, we have a sign like "Turn your smile on," something like that. So we use that kind of tricks, and basically we were quite confident before the pandemic situation, because actually now we cannot get the pulse of the recent time, because it's we just don't go outside, so it's hard to predict what situation like. We just can presume about something, but in general, like the final situation will be clear after all this is over. But before this, we were really successful, and as I said before, if you take a look at the stats, we really achieved those goals, and at least like the index of happiness was in a really high position. And of course, maybe like it's always good to compare apples with apples instead of comparing apples with oranges. So we're the capital city. We attract sometimes up to 90% of all foreign investments into our city, and we get all the talents in a national level. Now during the past 5 years, we get more and more international students from all around the world, and so for us, it's much easier, it's like if we compare the situation with other regions, including Lithuanian regions. But on the other hand, we always get the big pressure in a national level, in a regional level, because everybody wants to see us as a benchmark, so we get additional pressure in that area. So we're always looking for additional opportunities. We want to, be pioneers in many areas, especially when we need to compete not with our regions but with other cities around, like in neighboring countries. So that's why this identity part is really important, and we've done a lot of efforts in order to get the current situation. So one of those which was made was like we had a number of different events like hackathons, in order to promote smart cities. We also cooperate with different academic institutions. We're also involved in different initiatives from our entrepreneurs. Me myself, I'm also the council member of Vilnius Chamber of Commerce, Industries and Crafts. So we have about 600 companies there, and most of them, they're also encouraged to share their vision and how to generate some synergies in that area. And speaking about public-private partnerships that Rita has mentioned before, unfortunately now in this part of the world, it still is a bit, complicated situation, because, I'm good at expert in that area because I wrote 500 pages about public-private partnerships, and I was in that topic, for so many years. So I'm pretty aware about, how these things act. And the main success parameters for that are like the long-term trust from political side, then, great transparency and publicity, So if you want to make those sufficient, public-private partnerships, you need to have all those, three factors covered. So usually we have a lot of, turbulences before the elections, and, we don't get this long-term, support from the politician inside. That's why we're still struggling in that area, but we hope that we can incorporate the best practice, from our colleagues, for example, even in Ireland and for example, UK or France, they have where they have a lot of, best practice examples. And we hope we can, attract financial vehicles into our initiatives as well in a short-term period, because we're working on that. But I would say we're doing quite well, and those KPIs that I mentioned in my beginning of this this opinion. So I would say that we're doing fine in that projection. So and globally we got this let's say identity approved, by others. So let's hope we're going to continue in that way. But unfortunately now, like, the situation is a bit paralyzed because of the COVID-19 situation, because you cannot force people to be smiling and happy and admitting, that they're happy at the moment, because they're not, because people are dying, So.
I mean, and also with that identity, I know that Vilnius has had some quite humorous marketing campaigns when it's come to its tourism industry. That identity building comes from those sort of concerted campaigns, and as you say about the KPIs, having a clear focus has obviously helped you in that vein. I wonder, Thomas, also in Cork, I mean, second largest city in Ireland, obviously got a very strong life sciences sector. There's lots there that to shout about. But I mean, what have been some of the key challenges addressed by Cork in terms of building its identity, and which new technology do you foresee to be used in the next few years?
Yeah, look, I think again, Cork as well position. It's the fastest growing city region in Ireland, and it's very well backed from a capital expenditure perspective and from a national planning perspective. And we're very, very lucky to have an alignment of national planning and capital expenditure. It's actually undergoing review currently. And from a technology perspective, it's access to high quality speed. Internet access is the base level, right, for success. And you look at city regions, and city regions generally have very strong, connectivity, strong penetration of connectivity, good quality service. And what's quite interesting in Ireland at the moment is that a national broadband plan is also being progressed, which seeks to be the equivalent of what electrification was, a rural electrification program going back, 60, 70, 80 years, so that equivalent program from a broadband perspective is being rolled out. And what that should do, Alex, is really on the most simple basic level is to ensure that every single household in Ireland has access to the highest quality, potential that they can have. And I think that's a very fundamental base level to get right. And I think it's a very strong statement from government in terms of the democratic accessibility to what, maybe city regions or city centres take for granted even today, right? So I think that's a very strong base level. Look, Cork performs very, very strongly on FDI. We've over 43,000 people working in FDI with IDA client companies in Cork right now, with obviously the significant knock-on implications from a supply chain perspective and for the whole of the economy in terms of their continuity, in terms of their strength throughout this pandemic, has been very, very significant for this region. So it's something that we very much look to. It's everything from medtech to pharma to biopharma to security to financial services. It's a very strong footprint. And again, what we're working towards, and we have a strong place marketing brand here in Cork, and We Are Cork, which is very strongly invested into by all stakeholders. But really, what we're trying to do is to place the nature of our evolution on the attraction of talent, and it comes back to that quality of life piece from earlier. Fundamentally, if you have someone who's arguably the sharpest 24-year-old software engineer sitting in any nice, fantastically compelling city or region in Europe, that they might consider Cork as their next move and bring us their talent and enthusiasm. And that's where it's at. And really what we're trying to do is to position Cork as a place, a centre for that high quality, for R&D, and for beyond advanced manufacturing, to really become that hub of research and development. And again, very significant investments being made by the universities, 2 universities here in the region, in terms of their own capital projects. And we're pushing all the time for increased investment from government perspective as a percentage of GDP, to ensure that R&D dimension is very, very strongly reinforced and pushed on, to be honest, because like Taurimas said, we see ourselves on an international platform. It's not about the city next door or the town down the road. It's about how does Cork actually compete globally? Because if you're settling for anything less than that, you're just selling yourself short. So yeah, a few ABCs there, Alex.
No, that's really useful. And as you say, I mean, Vilnius and Cork definitely stand out internationally as building that identity. And you mentioned We Are Cork. Taurimas definitely explored it in depth about Vilnius. I wonder if I can bring in Rita and Long here to reflect on some of the comments made, and where maybe we can find some best practices from what Cork is doing, where Vilnius is doing, how we can find collaboration between the different approaches in these 2 cities. Maybe Rita, you can go first, and then Long, you can follow on.
Sure. I think options are infinite, right? So one thing we need to realize that COVID made us very clear that, well, things can happen that we never thought about that, like not traveling, as you mentioned, and not having the face-to-face meetings, and our lives just stopped, right? So I think we all face a reality in our lifetimes that we will never forget, and hopefully we're gonna get over it, right? So another thing is that importance of cities became even more critical. So what was the city before? I think livable, talking about the smart city setups and everything, but COVID having our lives and the reface to the reality actually accelerated some of the conversations, and some of the city agenda has that for some time, like the digitization, right? How do I make sure whatever happens, I can reach my inhabitants quickly? Secondly, how I help them to still continue their life as normal. What I mean by that, if I can't go to the supermarkets and I can't buy clothes for my kids because they are growing so fast, what do I do, right? What are the means that city can help me? So that's why I think our partnerships has been very critical with cities and governments as well. We stand with them, and then, providing some of the data, some of the best practices that we've been doing elsewhere, but also helping them to get together. So we have a partnerships with Harvard Tech, actually, and we've been doing some digital convenience during those hard times. And where US was still away from COVID, then Asia Pacific was facing, I remember this called the Europe was still entering phase. And we could just hear how the other cities were actually tackling. So I think this is very important, that we should all have the responsibility to help our communities to be more sustainable and inclusive, and take the digitization and some agendas top of our priority list to start working together, because this is a big learning for everyone, I believe.
Certainly. I mean, this is what the Urban Tech Platform is all about, really collaborating, bringing some of those best practices together from either side of Europe. And as you mentioned, really really driving forward in digitalization and investing in. We've heard about the infrastructure in Cork. We've heard about the public-private partnership potential in Vilnius. Long, I'd like to bring you in here. I know you've done a lot of work in terms of reinforcing communities, and maybe you have a few thoughts to reflect on what's been said by the other panelists, but maybe you can, how do you think cities can best reinforce their communities, and any additional thoughts on what the panelists have just said?
So I do think that, of course, facing the pandemics, we have a lot of flaws that we starting to see when the system arise, and that is not just only with infrastructure, but also with other kind of a little bit not so tight network that we had kind of taken for granted before the pandemic. So as I do agree with Rita and Thomas and Taurimas on the digitalization. It is not just only agenda for cities, but also agenda for the whole Europe as well. So the digital everything now, like our meeting here is online, and majority of the people are now having the online presence, and whatever we have to do is that it has to be somehow, some way, even later on, if we can meet face to face, it still have some component of online. So what I think is actually that city has the opportunity to really invest in what is already out there, enhance on those services that they already have. For example, here in Cork, they have quite a bit of services that are available for citizen and resident. When, for example, we have the floods that coming, it's kind of like not serious, but people are getting informed. And then people are also getting kind of support from the government. For example, if the flood is coming, then you have all the sandbags that are supposed to be in a certain places that you can take for free to protect your properties as well as protect your kind of commercial places. So all of those things are available, and the people would appreciate it. And it's the same thing as now, people starting to grow kind of vegetables and other crops within their kind of boundaries or within their gardens. And to some that already have did very well in the past year, they started to share that. And if the city has the network that they can share that with their neighbors, they can share that with kind of extended community, that would be a win for a lot of the people, and also helping the localized generated solution available. So it is not going to be totally everything will be online, but also if the combination of how the cities can have the infrastructures that available for people to get connected. And also another point is for city to thrive, it is not just only with the infrastructure, but it has to be with engaged citizens and residents.
Certainly, I think those sort of collaboration projects where citizens can feel they're part of a community, whether it's in a digital sense or in physical sense, as you mentioned with that example, is very key. Now, we're running short on time, and I'm very keen to bring in some audience questions, and thank you all to all of you who have sent them through. The first question, and I'm going to have to ask you to be somewhat brief, although I'm sure you can explore in depth, Rita, is from Katerina Zalamova. And she said that Mastercard wants to help cities by exploiting the data of their payment system. How do you assure inclusivity? So try and be brief. I know I'm sure you can go into a lot of depth, but interested to hear your take on that.
So we've been, as a company, we start being a very short payment company, but then we are pretty much doing a lot of data. So I would like to highlight the inclusivity about the data, especially in Europe, because of GDPR, consumers' rights, etc. So we've been taking a very serious action there. And what we would like to actually help is that how the people has been acting before and now, and what we need to do to understand the gaps between, right? So that will obviously tap into the inclusivity there. So, and this is again, it's a long conversation. It can be just one session to talk about inclusivity and data, but simply I can share that we are doing a lot of work with many countries, including Europe, understanding their pain points, bringing the data, and actually blending this to come up with the gap, and then helping the cities to be, whatever the problem they have. It could be transportation. It's very obvious. It could be spending, tax calculations, etc. So simply that is the point that we are linking to the citizens and the inhabitants for city.
Thank you very much for being brief. I know you wanted to go in a lot more depth there. Now, again, we're running short on time, and there have been quite a few questions, and thank you so much for sending them through. I'm sure we can follow up in the documents we'll be writing after this session. But I think a perfect place to finish is a question from Nicola Pinder, who asks, can cities become the agents of behavioural change towards building sustainable communities? And that really embodies our whole discussion today about reinforcing community and community engagement. So if I could briefly come to Taurimas first, then Thomas, maybe you can reflect. Feel free to add some examples from Cork or Vilnius in that sense. And then maybe we can finish off with some comments from Long and Rita. So Taurimas, please fire away. Can cities become agents for behavioural change towards building sustainable communities?
Definitely yes, because I believe that smart cities is the only way to remain competitive, because as we spoke before, we're not competing with our smaller cities in a national level. Most of them were competing in order to attract talents from all around Europe or all around the world, and if you're not competitive, you're not going to succeed with that. So for sure, everybody, it's on everyone's agenda, we're going to have more and more initiatives, and based on that, based on the development of different sustainable solutions, for the citizens, for the business, for entrepreneurs. And I believe that nowadays situation has persuaded a lot of different citizens to start their own businesses, and maybe to use the situation for different entrepreneurial visions and ambitions. So I'm pretty sure that most of the projects that we started in Vilnius city, in Vilnius municipality, they're gonna make their added value and make a definite impact for this process of building sustainable society. And in general, if we're going to be creative, we're going to be competitive, and everything is based on that. So I could name many initiatives. I asked the CFO of ours. Okay, I will not.
I'm just in the interest of time, I want to make sure I'll give a chance to all the panelists. I know there's so many great examples from Vilnius. Thomas, anything to add to that in terms of cities enabling sustainable communities?
Yeah, for sure. I'll just give a very concrete example. So in Ireland, we've got a planning system. Anything that happens in the built environment, any citizen can object to it, or they can make a submission in favour of it. And generally, it would be typical that the objectors would be in the majority numerically. And over the course of this summer, it's been very, very positive, whereby I spoke with all those pedestrianizations and all those good things that were happening in the public's realm over the course of this summer. And one space, which is the marina, which is a waterfront, now a waterfront promenade, it was a waterfront road, was converted and pedestrianized. Okay, so very, very positive, right? But what's probably one of the most unique things in terms of citizen engagement and in terms of behavioral change is that there was 224 submissions in favor and only 21 against. And I think that really speaks volumes in terms of people engaging in a proactive agenda right in their own back door. And I just think I think that's like the embodiment of your question, I would argue, Alex.
No, that's fantastic. A perfect concrete example. I wonder, final closing thoughts from Long very quickly, and then Rita, you can finish us off.
So there's a number of examples that already done by many cities, but what I would say is that how cities can be agent of behavior change is actually that people need to be appreciated, people need to be engaged, people need to be enabled and empowered to be a part of the solution. And what they have been doing so far is that what I suggest to Cork is also that they have systems of actually rankings and encouraging people to, for example, you give star for those who participate into public consultation. And then the more stars that they can have, then they can kind of be a part of community activities or anything, or volunteer programs that they can get involved in, or also for others to be a part of that. So definitely, yes, city can be agent of behavior change, but it has to be two-way. City has to be proactive and citizens need to be empowered and enabled to do so.
Perfect. Thank you. Very short and succinct. Empower those citizens. Rita, any final thoughts? Very short, if you could, just to add.
I couldn't be more agree with all the participants, and the building on this, that absolutely, I think if we put the citizens in the core, I think we can do a lot all together. I don't want to go into the details, as I try to mention a few names, but don't hesitate to reach us, Urban Tech, please. We are happy to help. We are working, Mastercard is working more than 500 cities globally, so we've been doing a couple of things that will be also perhaps useful for you. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. So Mastercard's at the ready to help engage those communities and empower citizens. Well, thank you all panelists. I think we had an engaging discussion, covered a lot. We could have spoken for probably another hour or two, but in the interest of succinctness, I'm going to pass back over to Christina, but thank you again, panel.
Thank you, Alex. And thanks again for joining us, to all of our attendees today. Extremely interesting discussion as ever, and thank you to our panel for your insights. Don't forget to visit the website and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss anything, which is urbantech.world. You can view the recordings of all of our events, including this one, and read expert insight documents free of charge on the website. The expert insight documents expand on the key takeaways, answer additional questions, and offer further insights from our panel and other experts involved in the project. Register for the next webinar, which is the 11th of March at 2 p.m. GMT. Get in touch and get involved and get the greatest benefit with bespoke networking opportunities and promotion. And if you'd like to engage with any of our panelists afterwards, please do get in touch. Thank you very much.